Hello there, I'm Woolly Wormhead and welcome to my channel. Today I'd like to give you some tips for improving your sideways knit garter stitch hats. If you know me or any of my work or watched my other videos, you know that sideways knit hats are a bit of a thing of mine and I like working them in garter stitch. I think garter stitch is magic. Now, let me just talk through the basic construction. Have a little recap in case you've not seen some of the other videos. This is a sideways knit hat called Penumbral. It's from a recent collection called Flineal. You can buy it individually or you can buy the ebook, up to you. It includes short row colour work to create the patterning. That's not particularly relevant for today. What's relevant is that it's worked in garter stitch. Now, it's worn this way up and yet it's knit this way round. When we work a sideways knit hat, we start with a provisional cast on, and then we work a series of panels over and over, and then we graft them at the end. Now, in each panel, in every row in each panel, even in the short row colourwork ones, you are working a little bit of the brim, a little bit of the body, and a little bit of the crown in every single row. It's the opposite, kind of the opposite to a vertically knit hat where you knit the brim, then the body and the crown, say if it's bottom up, or if it's top down, you do the crown, the body and the brim. You work them as separate parts when you're working a vertically knit hat, but in a sideways knit hat, you are working them all consecutively, okay? Which means that for the majority of the hats, there are short rows at the brim here to help create the shaping from the brim into the body. But those short rows also act as a way of making sure that the brim fits nicely. Like where, say, on a vertically knit hat, you might work a 1x1 rib in a smaller needle size, then go up a needle size into the body. The short rows here will have a similar effect. Now, when it's turned on its side, garter stitch acts as a 1x1 rib. All right. It is incredibly stretchy, but if you don't get your fabric just right, or you don't take into account those short rows, or perhaps you have loose selvages down here, then it's going to get over stretchy. And I've had a couple of people talk to me and I say, you know, I don't like cast stitch as a brim. I want to add something else. Or people have actually kind of said, you know, I need a brim treatment. It's not working. And there are ways to avoid the need to add anything extra because you don't. This is sufficient as it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the overhead and I'm going to give you a couple of tips to help make sure that you get a nice foam fabric, that you get a nice edge so that you don't need to actually do anything extra to it. And I'll also give a couple of suggestions if you're finding that as you're working it, that it's not coming out just right. There's a couple of other things that you can do as well. All right, so let me switch over and let's have a look close up. So here we have the penumbral hat close up, right under there. And the first thing that I want you to notice is how firm that fabric is. Now, yes, it's stretchy. Okay, garter stitch is stretchy, but I want you to see that it's a nice firm gauge. One of the biggest problems that folks have when they're knitting these is that they're not getting a firm enough gauge. Sideways knit hats, I mean, any hat really, in my opinion, should have a nice firm fabric because, you know, you want it to be decorative, but it needs to be warm and functional too. So make sure that you get your gauge nice and firm. Look, even though I'm stretching it out, you can't see my fingers through it. All right, so that's the first thing you want to do. If you find that you are not matching row gauge, because that's the one that's important for working, you know, because row gauge gives us the size, the circumference of the hat, then change your either needle size, go down a needle size to make your fabric firmer, or if you need to maintain the same number of panels, then go up to a slightly heavier yarn weight. Sideways knit hats will let you do that. What's important is that you get this nice firm fabric that you cannot see things through. The next thing to keep in mind, let's switch over and just have a look at hat because, you know, there's plenty of hats sitting around here, is that garter stitch is very, very stretchy. All right. It will bounce back provided that you've got a nice firm fabric. If your gauge is too loose, it's going to overstretch and it's going to kind of like, you know, not bounce back as easily. Whereas if you start with a nice firm fabric, those stitches are going to be nice and firm and they will bounce back. What you need, though, because of its extra stretch, is more negative ease. Now, I think in the penumbral hats, there's something like 6 inches of negative ease, which you might think is, wow, that's a lot of negative ease, and it is. but it's because it's garter stitch. You take that into account. And that doesn't mean it's going to keep stretching out, because these keep stretching out. All right, these are getting worn all the time and they still bounce back to their original shape. Now, these are all knit in wool, so you need to make sure that you work with a fabric, with a fiber, sorry, that has got some natural elastic in it that's going to bounce back. If you're working with an acrylic or a cotton or something that doesn't bounce in the same way, then yeah, your brim is going to overstretch. But that would be the same in a vertical knit hat as well. Okay. Now, the next thing, let's just pull up another one. Actually, let's pull up Toff. What you have down here, see this, the Toff is one of my most popular sideways knit short row colourwork hats. You see that there are short rows down here in the brim. They've been incorporated into the pattern, but they are here to help kind of make sure that the brim comes up and then goes outwards slightly. What you can do, let's see if I've got another one that's a little bit more, let's see if this is a lighter colour here. I have to say, so many hats sitting around. What you can do is you can put an extra short row. If you're finding that all of the other things are not working, you can put an extra short row in down here. So in other words, when you work back here, you could say stop here and then go back again in each panel, and it puts an extra short row into the brim, which helps firm up the brim and make it slightly smaller, and it'll be more snug as well. Okay. So they were some useful tips of what you can do with your actual hat to make sure that your yarn is nice and stretchy and your fabric is nice and firm. And if you want to put extra short rows in, you can. But here's another tip that I talk about fairly frequently when I'm teaching, is how you treat your garter stitch edges. All right, because this can make a difference to your selvage finish and make sure it's nice and neat, doesn't get saggy, and helps avoid it stretching out too much. Now, let me just knit to the end very quickly. Whoop, there we go. Now you see there that I slipped the first stitch knitwise, because that's, not just my habit, but it helps tighten up the edge. And then when I get to the edge, I will knit the last stitch through the back of the loop. This I've learned to do over the years because I am a messy English throw-in knitter. That's my style. I knit the last stitch to the back of the loop, and that helps give me a nice edge along here. And again, I then slip the first one knitwise and then carry on going that way there. And you can see that edge there is nice. It's great for picking up stitches if you're going in a different direction, but it's also got a nice even edge to it. You don't get a nice kind of any loose bumps or anything there. All right. If those other tips don't work, or you find that you are working a pattern, say like Cressida, that doesn't have space for you to put an extra short row at the brim, or maybe you've already knit your hat and it's already overstretched because your gauge wasn't firm enough, or maybe you're using a fiber that doesn't have any natural elastic to it. There is one last tip that's I'd kind of do as a last resort, but it might be really, really helpful for you. And it's actually really easy to do on a sideways knit hat. What I have here is a jewelry making transparent elastic thread. It comes in different weights, different thicknesses. You can get some that's super fine that go through a sewing machine. This one's actually pretty fine. I've got some heavier weight ones here. This stuff you can put on the inside of your brim to bring back some natural elastic to hold it in place. All right, so let me just show you how to do that. It's really easy with sideways knit garter stitch. Okay, so you turn your hat inside out. Get your nylon cord, because it's normally a nylon of some kind. You might want to try out different weights or use whatever you've got around. Okay, thread it onto the needle, and I don't break it. Or I'm not gonna suggest breaking it until you've done sufficient threading through so you know how much you need. And to do it, all you need to do is you just kind of like pick it through, go through underneath the edges like that, and you pull it through. All right. It's really easy. You just go under one of those ridges. Can you see what I'm doing there? Just go under one of the ridges. You can't see it, but once that gets held in place, Okay, that's going to restrict how far the garter stitch stretches out, because the elastic probably doesn't going to stretch as much as the garter stitch will. And from the other side, you can't see that at all. There, look. All right. Maybe if you're shining bright lights on it, you might just about see it, but it's going to be pretty invisible. If you wanted to, if you've got a solid color hat, I'm sure this stuff comes in different colors. Find one to match, but if not, just go with something transparent. All right. Now, I've started to thread it through here. You can just about see it under these bright studio lights. You'd maybe want to put another one down here, maybe one closer to the edge. How many you put in is up to you, I think, to make it. You want more than one line, all right? But add maybe 2, 3, maybe 4, one at the edge, depending on the depth of your brim and how much stretch your hat has, i.e. if it's a looser gauge or it's a fibre that doesn't bounce back quite so easily. And all you do is you are literally just passing it under the ridges there. You see that I'm doing? It's really simple. All the way through. And then when you're ready to come back, you can either tie it off or you can turn around, or say I've just worked to the edge of the thing there, I would just come down here and start again and go through. And it doesn't matter whether you're going through the ridges that point this way or the ridges that point that way. What's important is that it's getting caught beneath the stitches. Okay, so you can either tie it off when you get to the end of the round, or you can come down and just keep it going in one continuous piece. It's up to you. I might do a more in-depth tutorial on this at some point. We'll see. Leave me a comment if you're interested in that. But there you go. Elastic thread could be your savior there if you've already got a hat that's overstretched, or the fibre is not bouncy enough, or your gauge is a little bit loose. All right. I hope that's helped and given you some extra tips to get the most out of your sideways knit garter stitch hat without feeling the need to add anything extra onto the brim. The brim has already been incorporated. The stretch factor of the fabric has already been taken care of in the pattern, in the amount of negative ease that's included, and the short rows that have been added at the brim. You've got those tips there in case you've got a different fibre or it's overstretched. And also you've got the kind of ways to treat your selvage and using the elastic thread to sew in on the back, which is really easy on sideways. It's probably easier on sideways than it is on vertical. Okay. One last thing that will be of help. When you block these, don't pin them out. All right. Just wash them, gently lay them flat. As they're drying, pick them up and move them around so they don't form a kind of like a crease down the side. Just so you just kind of like, if it's laying flat like this, I would then turn it round and then lay it flat like this so it doesn't end up with a side crease. But always, always just kind of let them dry naturally flat. Don't stretch them out. Encourage them back into the shape that they were. That often helps restore a hat that's been overstretched, especially if it's in a wool fibre. All right, you are allowed to wash them and reblock them. But when you do your first blocking, do not pin them out and overstretch them. All right, just don't do that at all. Let the garter stitch just stay kind of like nice and firm when you're blocking it. Okay, right. If there's any specific questions about this, I will see if I can do a more in-depth tutorial. I've got such a long list of tutorials that we want to film, but leave a comment below if there's a problem outside of this that you've encountered with your garter stitch brim, and I'll see what I can do. All right, happy hatting and thanks for watching.